Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. Today, I've got a highly requested video for you, which is my Champion Ultimates tier list. A lot of people have been asking me to make this video, and, well, it's finally time. So, today we're going to be ranking every Champion's Ultimates from best to worst. Now, this tier list is not going to be nearly as complicated as my last Champions tier list, where I had different qualifiers for the different tiers, talking about how some champions are still good, but only in the right circumstance or only in the right hands. Nope, none of that. This is just going to be a straight S, A, B, C, D tier list where the bottom tier is the absolute worst and the top tier is the absolute best. So before we get started, if you guys have been enjoying the content, tier lists, and guides on this channel recently, then make sure you're subscribed by hitting that big red sub button. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get straight into the video. Alright, now let's get things started with the D tier. Now before I actually talk about any of these, I do want to emphasize that just because these ultimates are in the D tier doesn't mean that they can't still get value. Every single ultimate in the game is still technically usable, good, and can get kills or be helpful to the team in some way, but ultimates still aren't all made equal, and some ultimates are still better than others. So I want to clarify, these ultimates can still work, but they're just not as good as other ultimates in a lot of circumstances. So, kicking off the D tier, we have Koga's ultimate, which would be really nice if you could actually confirm any of the damage, which tends to be the theme with basically every ultimate in this tier. Koga's ultimate does provide some damage immunity, which is pretty nice, but as soon as the ultimate ends, he kind of stops in place for a little bit, and he can be caught kind of with his pants down, and can die very easily immediately after the ultimate ends. And of course, basically every champion can run out of his ultimate in some way or another because, well, it doesn't cripple anybody, so they can just use their movement abilities to get out, which means it's not really that good of an ultimate. Next up, we have Sky's ultimate, and I also kind of want to talk about Dredge's ultimate with Sky's ultimate because both of them have basically the same problem. They can be decent when it comes to zoning, but they almost never reliably secure damage because, well, kind of like Koga's ultimate, it's very easy to get away from them. Sky's ultimate in particular has such a long fuse time that, well, if you get caught in it, it's almost always your fault unless you got hard CC'd into it. And Dredge's ultimate, well, it has kind of the same issue, but it also has the issue where it's just really fickle when it comes to placing it. If you're not careful, you can end up putting your Dredge ultimate halfway across the map, and, well, it's just a little bit awkward. Next up, we have Octavia's ultimate, which sabotages her own team. That's right, Octavia's ultimate causes screen shake. Not just for Octavia, not just for the enemy team, but for her own team as well. Yeah, on top of that, same problem as Dredge's ult and Sky's ult. It's decent at zoning, but it rarely ever secures damage. Next up we have Corvus's ultimate, which can reliably secure damage because the second you put it down, it does do damage, but it doesn't do a lot of damage, and it's also very easy to get out of. Lastly, we have Atlas's ultimate, which is kind of the only ultimate in this tier that doesn't follow that trend of, well, you can just get away from it. It doesn't do damage. You can just walk out of it. Nah, it's a totally different style of ultimate. It's a crowd control ultimate, and you can actually land it pretty reliably. But the thing is, it is super situational. You can use Atlas's ultimate to stop someone from diving you. You can use it to stop them from touching the objective, and you can use it to kind of make enemies just go away for a few seconds, so you can focus on other people. But generally, it's not as impactful as a lot of other ultimates on this tier list, and also Resilience 3 completely shuts it down. At that point, you're basically only getting the crowd control immunity from it as value, which is not exactly what you need from an ultimate. Next up we have the C tier, which is pretty big, and let's just start off with Nyx, who is at the bottom of C tier here. Nyx has a very interesting ultimate with a lot of stuff going on. She sucks people in phases, and at the end of the ultimate she stuns them, and it also cleanses any of the damage that she took in from her Royal Presence, or Petrified Blood as I call it, because I'm a Path of Exile nerd. And honestly, that cleansing of the health effect is really useful, but the rest of it kind of isn't. Nyx is such a crowd control heavy champion that you're almost always buying Rezeal against her, meaning that her ultimate is pretty weak in the crowd control department because it's just going to get, well, nixed pretty early on in the game. That is if it even stuns anyone at all, because even without resilience, the pull is pretty weak, and you can also use any movement ability in the game to basically get away from it. So Nyx ult, not that good, but still I feel like not as bad as the other ultimates in D tier, specifically because of its ability to cleanse that Royal Presence health. Next up we have Betty's ultimate, which does do a decent amount of damage, and does give her pretty darn good traversal, but it's not really that good at reliably finishing off targets. It doesn't apply Cauterize, and it doesn't do enough damage to one-shot really anybody unless they're exceptionally squishy, like Eevee, except Eevee can just get away from it because she still has better mobility, so Betty Ult, not that useful. Vora Ultimate and Zen Ultimate are two ultimates that are pretty similar, I would say. They both provide you some form of movement bonus, whether it be Zen's dash or Vora's movement speed bonus, and they both are single target kind of executes. Zen's is more of an execute with Guillotine, but by default it just does a little bit of damage. And both of them are just pretty mediocre. I mean, with Vora, you have to get someone to a low amount of HP for the execute to even work, and, well, you can still die while using it, or you can die immediately after using it. And with Zen's ultimate, you lock yourself in place completely vulnerable while you're slashing away at the target, meaning that, well, their teammates can help just kill you, and even if you're running Guillotine, if the enemies have damage reduction or some form of healing, they can still live. So I feel like both ultimates are just kind of mid, but they do still have their place. Next up we have Tyra's ultimate, and we can also talk about Buck's ultimate while we're here. Both of them are basically the same ultimate, they just increase your fire rate. And while they can be good for getting kills because they do pump out a lot of damage, they also basically tell everyone on the enemy team, hey! Kill me. Focus me. I have a gun and it goes burr and you need to shoot me. And both of them are pretty squishy when that happens because they're not exactly very tanky characters. So I feel like it's harder to get value out of these ultimates than some of the better ultimates up on the top of the tier list. Next we have Torvald, who has a pretty good ultimate, especially on maps where you can knock people off of the map. But the thing is, with Resilience, that becomes a lot harder, and also not every map has a place where you can score environmental kills. And some of the maps that do have environmental kill areas, like Timbermill, aren't exactly easy to really push players into that general direction. And apart from that, Torvald's ultimate does have some use with pushing enemies just away from his backline or off of the objective or what have you. But another reason why I scored down on this ultimate compared to other tank ultimates is that, while it does have crowd control immunity, the crowd control immunity isn't instant, meaning you can't use Torvald's ultimate to reactively counter a lot of crowd control in the game. Like if you see a Saris ult coming and you press your own ultimate, you might not actually be able to get that crowd control immunity in time, and you'll just get sucked up by the Saris. So, yeah, I wish that crowd control immunity were instant, and it is still a good ultimate in a lot of circumstances, but it does get countered pretty easily, and on half the maps, well, it loses on some of that prime value that it can get on maps where it can, score an environmental kill. Next, we have Tiberius' ultimate, which is in the same boat as Betty's. It does some damage, I guess, and it has really good mobility, but it doesn't really do anything other than that. The mobility is really, really nice, and that's why I put it above the D tier, but if you try and use it for damage, you're probably just going to end up getting yourself killed, because, well, he's super predictable when he does the spin dash that makes him invulnerable. You can cripple him out of it, and if you're doing the regular dashes, you just do less damage. So, yeah, not really a great ultimate. Now, Terminus' ultimate is kind of funny, because it has the exact same problem as every single ultimate in D tier that does damage, right? It's very, very easy to get away from the damage. It basically has the same fuse time as Sky's Bomb, almost. But the thing that sets it apart from the rest is that, well, it lets Terminus resurrect himself. So it has that added benefit. You don't really use Terminus' ultimate for the damage, you use it so you can stay in the fight longer. If they kill you, they're going to have to kill you again. And so that's the real allure of Terminus' ultimate. But apart from that revive, it doesn't really do much else. And also, you give a revive to the worst tank in the game. So, like, how much value are you really getting out of it? Next, we have Strix's ultimate, which is kind of a bootleg Mave blind. It blinds somebody for a little bit. Usually it's more single target than Mave's blind. It can blind multiple people, but, they have to be really close together. And, well, you can still use Game Sense and Resilience to completely counter the ultimate. So, it is kind of nice, and it can get kills if the enemies, aren't able to hit you, like if you're unpredictable, but still not the best ultimate. Shylin's ultimate gets hard countered by every reveal in the game, damage over time, and illuminate, but it still does provide him that sweet fire rate increase, so it's kind of like Tyra's and Buck's ultimate in the same regard. And if the enemies don't have any reveals, or they aren't buying illuminate because you're the only invisible character on the team, this ultimate can actually score some pretty good values, so that's why it goes in the C tier and not the D tier. Leon's ultimate is pretty good for what it does. It's a duelist ultimate. It's the press E to win the duel button. However, it still can be countered by just moving behind a corner or putting up a defensive ability, and it's really basically just a single target ultimate. Rarely are you ever hitting multiple targets with it, and it's also not enough to secure a kill on characters in some circumstances. Once they get Haven, if they have any self-sustain or any healing, Well, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. The crowd control immunity is also really nice, though, and the damage reduction can be helpful, so it's certainly not a useless ultimate, but it's not as impactful as other ultimates. Genos Ultimate is a fun one to see when it works. If you get a pentakill with Genos Ult, it feels like the best thing in the game, man. But how often are you even getting a double kill with his ultimate? How often are you getting a single kill with his ultimate? It falls into the same problem that other ultimates have, where it's easy to get out of. However, unlike something like Sky Ult or Dredge Ult, it goes through walls and it has map-wide range, so it is a bit more reliable than some of those other ultimates. And, well, I guess the reveal is nice. And I guess it's just really satisfying. That's my justification for putting it above the other ultimates in D. Next we have Io's ultimate, which is kind of in the same vein as Leon's. It's more of a duelist ult that you use on a flanker when they come to dive you. Yes, it can also secure environmental kills, kind of like Torvald's ultimate, but that's very map dependent. And yeah, even still, I'd say it's actually a little bit harder than Torvald's ultimate to really pull that off with. But the damage immunity is still nice, the guaranteed stun is still very nice, and the little bit of damage is still nice. So yeah, it's decent. In Inara's ultimate, you could probably justify putting it a little bit higher, but the reason why I have it in C is because it's just a stun, and it has a really long wind-up animation, meaning you do have a lot of time to react and either reposition or put up a defensive ability to try and block it. Now, one thing to note about Inara's ultimate that does make it pretty valuable is that it goes through shields. So stuff like Fernando's shield and Barrick's shield cannot defend you from the Inara ultimate. Of course, they can defend you from Inara after she stuns you, in the case of Barrick's ultimate or Makoa's shield or something like that. But, yeah, it does still go through that shield, so, you're still going to get stunned. But Resilience does hard counter it, and, yeah, it doesn't really do a lot of damage either, so I feel like it's just not the best stunning ultimate in the game, but it can still absolutely be brutal when it works. Imani's ultimate is down here in C because, well, it can terrorize lobbies, but it can also kind of be so much of a throw that some players won't even use it throughout the entire duration of the match. It makes Imani stationary, which means that, well, she can be very susceptible to enemy flankers, and she has to either use her dragon to defend herself, or rely on her team to defend herself. Also, the dragon is super big. It's kind of clunky to use when it comes to its movement, and the enemies can absolutely just focus that thing down, even without Bulldozer, and still absolutely destroy it. That being said, it does do a lot of damage if you can actually get in close, so it's not totally useless, and it does force the enemy's attention onto the dragon instead of Imani's other teammates, but it's really not the best. Lastly, we have Azan's, which is an absolutely incredible traversal ultimate. I mean, you can go so far with this thing. But it doesn't really do much else. It does a little bit of damage, and it does have that little bit of knockback, but once Azan lands on the ground, if you time it right, you can actually kind of catch him in some serious traps, like a Dredge ultimate, for example. Azan's ultimate makes a Dredge ultimate reliable, but you can also use, like, crowd control and just, like, pile on bombs with Bomb King or something. You can do a lot to actually, hit him once he lands on you, but he can also use it to get away, and in that case it is a little bit more reliable. And it is a good ultimate, but I feel like it's just, again, not as impactful as some of the ultimates we're going to discuss later. Hey you, would you like to take 75% of your health pool as damage, and there's nothing you can do about it? Wouldn't that be fun? Ah, that's right, meet Kasumi Ultimate, the auto-aim 1500 damage bomb that can also spread to other teammates nearby. It's a good single-target ultimate. The area damage is a little bit hard to confirm, though, because, well, it just shotguns projectiles out. You can dodge them. You can just jump above the character and it won't hit. So, it's really a single target ultimate only, but if you ult that single target and you just keep slashing at them, they're basically guaranteed to die, making it a much more reliable execute than the likes of Xin and Vora that we discussed earlier. Next, we have Sati's ultimate, which is kind of like a Genos ultimate if it were more reliable. You shoot out 3 shots instead of 1 big shot, and you have a lot more control over who you hit with it, how you hit with it, and if you pair it with some reveals, it can actually be quite devastating. Of course, it doesn't apply Cauterize, and in some cases it is a little bit awkward to use, but it's also highly spammable if you run the right build, and even if you don't run that build, it's still a pretty solid ultimate. Next up, we have Yaggaroth's ultimate, which I would say is a step above the executes we've discussed in C tier, that being Xin and Vora's. First of all, Yaggaroth actually has the HP to sustain a few people looking at her, meaning she has a better shot of actually killing the target than Vora or Xin do. Also, if she does actually end up eating the target, it is a guaranteed one-shot, no questions asked. But if multiple people do actually focus her, she still can lose that second health pool that she gains during her ultimate. But the thing is, if multiple people are shooting Yaggaroth, that means they're focused on her and not focused on her team. So her teammates can actually swoop in while they're all focused on Yaggorath and start to do a lot of damage. So it's one of those ultimates where, yeah, you actually do kind of want the enemy team to look at you, which, you know, with some good team coordination can actually play out extremely well. Also, Yaggorath's ultimate has some cheeky scenarios where she can ult people behind walls, meaning that it's even more of a guaranteed ultimate than Xin and Vora's. Also, it does end up leaving the enemy heavily displaced, unlike the two executes we've discussed earlier. So it is a step above the rest, but the thing that does hold it back is the fact that it does have a minimum range, meaning if you get close to the giant 6,000 health worm, you're actually rewarded with the fact that she can't eat you? Yeah, it makes no sense, and honestly, I think that whole minimum distance thing should be removed, but yeah, still a decent ultimate in some cases, but you really got to have that good team coordination. If you don't have good team coordination, either with your team protecting you as you secure the target, or with your team actually making plays while they're focused on you, then it's going to feel a lot worse. But I'm kind of looking at the ultimate here from the positives and what it can actually do when your team is playing around it, rather than the negatives here. Next, we have Kinessa's ultimate, which can be good in the hands of a good sharpshooter, but again, it's not as impactful as some of the other ultimates we've discussed. Haven does counter it. Shields do counter it. Obviously, you don't get any bonus on shields whatsoever with this ultimate, and so there are ways to counter it, but also, if you dare peek Kinessa with your head exposed, no shields, no nothing, prepare to die. It's just that simple. Willow's ultimate is pretty good. It gives you sustained flight for several seconds, as well as infinite ammo. It allows you to get a very good angle on enemies. It allows you to be aggressive. It's basically Willow's time to shine and actually get things done, which is pretty nice. But, of course, if you have good hit scans, it still is counterable, just like Drogo's entire gameplay, really. Victor and Vivian are two pretty similar ultimates. They just do a lot of damage. Victor's is a big bomb, which is much more reliable than Dredge's or Sky's. And it's also decently spammable, especially if you're running Shrapnel and doing a lot of damage consistently. And then Vivian's ultimate has the unique mechanic where it never ever expires until Vivian dies, or the enemies physically shoot it down. And if you're playing a single target champion, like Victor for example, and you don't use the grenade, the drones can actually block a little bit of damage. Of course, blasters do counter it, but they are still there to kind of block damage from the sides, and they do a decent amount of extra damage on top of your base LMG, which is nice. It's still not like the greatest ultimate, but for what it is, I'd say it's pretty decent. Talus, of course, has an ultimate that lets him travel across the map, punch somebody in the face, punch them again, and then teleport away when his entire team focuses him. So, it's very good at getting kills in some circumstances, and especially if you have reveals on like a low HP target or you know who's low, you can use it to reliably finish people off, and if you use it properly with your teleport, you can get away with the deed. Overall, it's actually a pretty solid ultimate. Next, we have Pips, which, well, this patch, if Pip is using his ultimate by himself with Combat Medic, he can still kind of struggle to kill the chicken. But the thing is, if you use Pip's ultimate in tandem with your teammates, it's basically a free kill on at least one target, if not multiple. You can instantly evaporate the tank from a safe distance as well, because it's a projectile. You can just shoot that thing out, and well, bam! Dead tank. So it's pretty nice. It does get countered by resilience, which is where you have to have good team coordination come into play there, so you make sure the second the chicken hits, you instantly start shooting them. But if it works, oh my goodness does it work. Next we have Rom's ult, which is a bit more of a reliable version of Inara's stun that also does a bit more damage, and it also has the added benefit of not just piercing shields, but actually destroying the shields, meaning that if Barrick puts up his shield, he's going to get stunned, but also he has no barrier to protect you from all the bullets that are going to be raining down on his stunned big head. So very, very nice. Also pretty spammable, generally just a solid ultimate. Maldamba's ultimate comes next, and just like Inara's ultimate, it does one thing, which is basically stun people. A fear is basically a stun, but it's significantly more reliable than Inara's. You can pop that instantly on a flank if they dive you and basically just interrupt their whole thing. And while Resilience does counter it, the interrupt is still very nice, and I'd say it's generally just a bit more reliable than Inara's, which is why I put it a step above. Moji's ultimate is the second polymorph in the game, and it is a single target execute that, again, I feel like is a bit more reliable than Vora and Zin's. And the reason I say that is, well, A, if you hit the projectile and then you eat them, it's a guaranteed execute. No funny business like Zin or Vora's where they have to be below a certain threshold, or you have to slash them 5 times and hope they don't get healed. None of that funny business. Nope, you just walk up to them and eat them. And the thing is, you can do magic barrier tech, where you use the ultimate and then you press magic barrier, and basically they turn into the polymorph. You're invincible in the magic barrier, and you just walk at them. So there are reliable ways to make this ultimate work. However, it's still a single target ultimate, so at the end of the day, you won't have as much impact as if you're using an AoE ultimate. And it can still be very risky because you have to get in melee range of the person, and that often involves actually going in and diving the enemy team as well. Next we have Maeve's ult, which is a step above Strix's ultimate because it's a blind in a much, much bigger radius, and even though you can buy resilience for Maeve's ultimate, there's actually a unique mechanic where Maeve's ult cannot be lowered to lower than 2 seconds, without just completely cleansing Cauterize like with Inara's Mother's Grace. So, resilience counters it to a certain extent, but eventually there is a point at which resilience won't work, and the blind does allow your team to kind of make plays, and, you know, even if Maeve doesn't make the plays herself, the blind could potentially help her teammates get a kill, which is pretty nice. You challenge Makoa? Safely from a distance, that's what I always say. Makoa's ultimate gives him potentially 8,000 uncauterized HP if he uses it when he's extremely low, which is really, really good. You can use Makoa's ultimate, and then immediately cancel it if you so choose and get back to shooting and basically just have it as a full heal. It gives him great staying power in a fight, but of course if you have the opportunity to start swinging, then he does do increased DPS over his cannon ever so slightly, and with Leviathan, you get a movement speed bonus, you get your hook back, and you get your shell spin back, which is a pretty good deal if you ask me. And Makoa's ultimate, generally solid. It does have its counterplay though, like percent base damage, executes, Drogo's ultimate, so there is counterplay, but, well, you can't deny that HP, and yeah, it's pretty solid. Lex's ultimate is an area execute, so this is, I think, the first area execute we actually have on the list here. And yeah, it's basically like Vora's ultimate if he could use it at range and also potentially get a pentakill with it. So for that reason, I do have to bump it up over Vora's because it's a bit safer and it's also a bit more effective potentially. So yeah, overall pretty solid ultimate. Next up we have Drogo's ultimate, which is again a step above the executes in C tier, though you do have to get in up close and personal with Drogo's ultimate, meaning that sometimes, well, you can get the kill, but you'll die immediately after, so you have to be careful with it. But if you don't get the kill, you do get some of the ultimate refunded, and you can kind of just use it to fly way up high into the sky and get a nice vantage point on people, so there is that as well. And yeah, you can't deny the fact that this ultimate can get a free kill on basically any tank if you use it well, assuming that the enemy tank doesn't have their own very special ultimate that we'll talk about in a little bit. Bomb King and Androxus are the final two ultimates I want to talk about. Bomb King's is significantly better than Betty's when it comes to actually getting kills. It does a lot more damage, and if you don't finish off the target, it stuns them, meaning you can stick up a bunch of sticky bombs on them and blow them up. Resilience does counter it, and like Drogo's ultimate, Moji ultimate, and a few other ultimates we've discussed, you do have to get up close and personal with it, but Poppy Bomb makes that a little bit easier. And if you can survive, well, you're probably going to kill the target that you ulted, so that is pretty nice. Androxus' ultimate does a lot of damage, but it doesn't apply Cauterize, so you can kind of just heal that damage right back up if you have a powerful healer, which does kind of suck, but if you use it in tandem with a teammate who's also shooting at them to apply that Cauterize, then it's a lot better. It also gives them flight, and yeah, it's generally pretty solid. Fellas, we are officially 2/3 of the way done. Let's talk about the A tier. Let's start off with Barrack's ultimate, which is the Dome Shield, the most powerful shield in the game with a powerful flamethrower turret to boot. If you use it on top of somebody, the damage from that flamethrower is absolutely scalding. It does so much damage, man. It's actually kind of ridiculous. And the shield can block a lot of damage. Even with Wrecker, it will still take a little bit to actually burst down that shield. However, it does have its counterplay, like Rom's ultimate, like we mentioned earlier, but it's still absolutely great for hunkering down on the point and just giving a lot of staying power and a lot of pressure in a fight. What you can do is you can put down your base shield. Once that expires, you can put down your ultimate, and then by the time your ultimate expires, you'll probably have another shield back, or you'll be close to it, which gives him just a lot of brawn and a lot of shieldage for the enemies to chew through, so very, very good ultimate. Caspian's ultimate is basically just Androxus' ultimate, but better. You do a lot of damage, but you're also shooting the ultimate projectiles in tandem with either your sword or your pistol projectile, which with measured cadence can even shoot out another projectile and just absolutely chew through the enemies. And of course, because you're using your base weapon on top of the actual ultimate projectiles, it means that you yourself are applying Cauterize, so your ultimate can't really be healed back up, and it absolutely chews through anything if your aim is good. I'm talking two-shotting squishies reliably. I'm talking shredding through Rom in like 5 hits. Oh my goodness, it's disgusting. It is so satisfying too. Really, really satisfying ult. Next we have Seven and Vatu's ultimate, which are both in the same vein. Vatu's ultimate is a stun, which, like we've talked about earlier, gets countered by resilience, but the way it works with this kit means that it is still really, really effective because, of course, you can do the kunai, ultimate kunai combo to absolutely decimate people. Use shadow bombs if you really feel like you need it, and when you just pair the stun with his mobility, it is actually really, really good. And then Seven's ultimate is just next level BS. Oh my goodness gracious. It's a fear that can be very, very quickly applied to a target, and the thing is, once you're marked, you can't cleanse it. If 7 marks you as Eevee, and then you ice block, and then you exit ice block, the mark will still be on you, and he can just fear you after the ice block ends the second you get out of the ice block. It's so dumb. It's so dumb, I hate it. It even applies on invisible people that you can't even see are there. It's so dumb. So yeah, A tier. Just, let's move on. I'm disgusted. Cassie's ultimate is very, very solid. It's a team-wide global reveal. So everyone on your team can see everyone on the enemy team, no matter where they are on the map. This was already really strong last update, with some good team coordination, of course. You can pop it at the start of a team fight, see where everybody's going, gang up on people, and it's beautiful. It also counters certain ultimates like Maeve's ult, and it also just flat-out counters invisibility, so bye-bye Shaolin ult, bye-bye Sky. And on top of that, it gave her a 30% movement speed buff, which is really, really nice. It allows her to chase down the people that she has revealed. But then this patch, they decided to give it the added benefit of 20% increased fire rate. So she does more damage. She can do her burst combos faster. If Cassie runs at you with her ultimate up, run the opposite direction. It's like Tyra and Buck's ultimate, but just better, right? You've got the fire rate increase, but then you've also got a movement speed increase, but then you've also got a team-wide global reveal. So even if you're not the one popping off, your teammates can still pop off because they can see where the enemies are. So really, really valuable ults. Next up, we have some support ultimates. We've got Ying, Saris, and Grover. Ying and Grover's ultimates are pretty similar. They both just do a metric crap ton of healing. Ying's ultimate allows her to spread that healing out across all of her teammates no matter where they are on the map. So kind of like Cassie's ultimate if it were just a bunch of healing. And it also allows her to teleport to where her teammates are, which can help Ying out in a pinch, but the main thing is just that healing. It's really, really good, really, really consistent, and with morale boost, you can spam it a lot, which is very nice. And then Grover's ultimate does a lot more healing, but in a much more concentrated area. So he can still potentially hit his entire team with it, but they've all got to be standing next to him. And this amount of healing is the second most powerful healing ability in the game after Furious Beam, but it's much more consistent than Furious Beam because you have a much wider radius to it. And it also heals through walls, which is pretty nice. And the thing about Grover's ultimate is it's very spammable because you can cancel it midway through to save some of your ultimate charge, and with the amount of healing and damage that Grover can consistently do throughout the match, he's going to be building his ultimate super quickly. So it's super reliable, does a crap ton of healing, and even though both Grover and Ying's ultimates get countered by Cauterize, they're still just so good that it honestly doesn't really matter in a lot of circumstances, especially if the tanks by Rejuvenate. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. After that, we have Saris' ultimate, which is infamous for its wombo combos. You combo Saris ult with a Dredge ult, all of a sudden the Dredge ult is good. You combo Saris ult with a Sky ult, hey guess what, Sky finally is useful for once in her life. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. Of course, it does get countered by shields, but last year it did get the added benefit of being able to be cast mid-air to basically instantly detonate it like a sticky bomb. So, you can kind of bypass shields if you're really good. Also, you can combine it with the stun she has in base kit to basically stun everybody with Convergence, group them all up, and then stun them again, which is really, really nice. And again, its combo potential with AoE ultimates cannot go understated. You can use Sarah's ult with Bomb King ult, with Androxus ult, with Caspian ult, with just basically any ultimate. And it's really, really nice. So, very nice ultimate. Obviously does have its counterplay, but I still think that it just has a lot of circumstances where it can be really fun to use, and so that's why I'm putting it up in A tier. After that, we have Eevee's ultimate, which with Snow Globe is extremely spammable, and without Snow Globe is extremely potent. So, it does a decent amount of damage, but what it really does is it cripples and slows the enemies, like a much more powerful version of Inara's Treacherous Ground. It's much bigger, much harder to escape, and much easier to just directly deploy on top of somebody because of Eevee's mobility, so it really shines in that department, and it can really cause mayhem on a battlefield. And it can also really, really guarantee kills on champions who rely on their mobility to survive. If you can catch somebody like Maeve or Vatu in that ultimate, they're basically just dead, which is really, really nice. And of course, supports also basically are just a free kill if they get caught in the ultimate, because, well, as long as Eevee can land her follow-up shots, there's really nothing they can do about it. So, very powerful ultimate. Khan's ultimate is basically Makoa's hook but on steroids. You can pull someone in from a much longer distance away, and then you can just pinata them for your team to kill them, and even with resilience, it still lasts for a very long time. Alternatively, you can get environmental kills pretty easily. All you've got to do is aim down into the water on a lot of maps, or just aim into the fidget spinners on Splitstone, and wha-bam, throw them. That's a free kill. Of course, you do still want to be careful when trying to go for environmental kills with someone like Ying, because she can just teleport away. But the pinata method is still very, very good. Just hold them in place, let your team do the job, and it's a free kill. A very easy, reliable, good, free kill. So Khan ult, very strong. Ashe's ultimate is a stun that is another stun that's much more reliable than Inara's, because you can just jump on somebody, close the distance, and they have much less time to react, especially if you use the power of a low ceiling. If you're in a room or a tight hallway like the many hallways on Bazaar, you can just wha-bam, pop the ultimate, and instantly stun somebody. So that's very nice. And again, resilience counters the stun. But it also makes her immortal, so she can really make a lot of space with her ultimate. And while she can be CC'd out of it, resilience exists for the Ashe as well, so there's only so much the enemy team can do there. And again, it's just a super solid ultimate for making space, getting kills, and being very, very aggressive. In the top of A tier, we have Ray and Ruckus's ultimates. Ruckus' ultimate does... it does stupid amounts of damage. It does absolutely ridiculous amounts of damage. It does the most damage per second in the game, in fact, at I believe 4,000 DPS, which is just... it's hard to put into words how much damage it does. Of course, it does come at the cost of making Ruckus stationary, but if you're using aerial assault, then you can just dive bomb the enemies, get into a position where you're basically in their face, and just blast them to smithereens. Also, it does kind of force the enemies to either run away from you or focus on you, which means they're distracted from what your team is doing, and so that can also set up some plays for your team as well. And yeah, I mean, geez, when you combine it with Ruckus's mobility, his survivability, oh, it's so good. And then Ray's ultimate is the cause of infinite frustration for many players who are just trying to get a simple kill. And then it's time for Ray to save the day, and they become immortal, and they get full healed, and you just have to cry. Of course, Ray is not invincible while she casts this ult, meaning you can focus her, but a smart Ray won't necessarily use it to save herself all the time. She'll use it to save, a teammate, and then she'll still be at basically full HP, and with 50% DR, she'll effectively then have like 4,000 health, and it's not feasible to kill her in the amount of time that the ultimate lasts. And yeah, it's frustrating to no end. It really just is. It's so frustrating, and so that's why it goes in A tier. And finally, we get to the 4 lonely champions up here in S tier. We have Fernando, Lilith, Grok, and Furia. Let's go ahead and start with Fernando. So, Fernando's ultimate makes himself and his teammates immortal for 4 seconds, and it also makes Fernando crowd control immune, which is, oh my gosh, its power simply cannot be understated. If you are near Fernando, and you're not playing aggressive during this ultimate, what are you doing, man? Unless you're low, of course, in which case Fernando's ultimate gives you a get out of jail free card. You can use that time to reposition, or get healed back up, or just generally try and stay alive, which is really, really helpful. Fernando's ultimate literally counters everything in the game. In our stun, bam, pop Fernando's ultimate. Now nobody can die during the stun. Bomb King ultimate, same thing, bam, pop the ultimate. Drogo's Dragon Punch coming your way? Have no fear. Fernando ultimate, well, bam! Oh my goodness. It's just the no you button. No, I am the one living here. You don't get to kill me. I'm Fernando. It's so good. It's so good. If you use it properly, if you use it at the right time, if you don't use it when you're the only one alive during your overtime push, yeah, it is so good. It is so good, man. So yeah, Fernando ultimate, easy S tier for me. And then the rest of the S tier ultimates are support ultimates. Support ultimates are generally pretty powerful in this game, and these three are absolutely no exception. So let's start off with what I would say is the weakest of the three ultimates up here, which is Lilith. So Lilith's ultimate does a lot of stuff. First and foremost, it makes the blood moon rise. It turns the entire screen red and makes it a little bit hard to tell what's going on. It's kind of like a toned down Maeve ultimate. It doesn't necessarily blind you, but it can still make it hard to tell what's going on, especially if there's a lot of spam on the screen. On top of that, Lilith gets her own personalized Cassie ultimate. She reveals everyone on the enemy team, but only to herself. Meaning that, well, her teammates can't see where everyone is, but she can still use comms to tell her teammates exactly where the enemies are, and kind of what pushes to look out for, etc., which is really, really nice. Then, it also gives her entire team 30% uncauterizable life rip, so they can just start blasting and basically heal themselves, which is really, really good, especially on champions who have very high DPS or area of effect weapons. And then, it also gives Lilith crazy increased blood health regen, meaning she can spam her swarms like crazy, without really having to worry about her own survivability. Alternatively, she can just go in. She can just walk at people, because she has 4,000 health that's constantly being regened, and just kill them, which is really good. And then also, because we're not done yet, it makes her movement ability really good. She goes way farther and way higher, and it's much more spammable. It does so much stuff. It's honestly kind of crazy. And of course, on top of all that, because I forgot one thing, it gives her damage reduction while she's initially casting the ultimate during that initial animation. It's honestly mind-boggling how many abilities they were able to cram into this one ultimate. So, yeah, this ultimate does so much stuff, and it makes Lilith so powerful that it has to go in S tier. Next up, we have Grok's ultimate, which it's just so much fun. I love Grok's ultimate, man. It's so much fun to use. So it gives him the power of flight, first and foremost, meaning he can fly above the battlefield, he can fly around, he can reposition extremely effectively, and get to high grounds that he can't normally access. Second of all, it also provides himself and multiple of his teammates nearby a movement speed increase that is exceptionally strong, especially if he already has speed totems on the ground. So he can charge multiple of his teammates directly at the enemies and basically rush them down. It also heals his teammates and himself for a pretty substantial amount of healing per second, which again can stack with totems if they're already on the ground. But on top of that, he also does damage to and slows multiple nearby enemies. So not only is his team rushing at them at Mach 5, but they're walking away at a snail's pace. So really, really powerful ultimate for just diving the enemies, sending people at them, and just winning the team fight. And last but not least, it gives Grok crowd control immunity, so you can't stun him out of it, and he can use it to basically dodge powerful crowd control ultimates that are coming in, like Ceres' ult, and actually maybe even save his team from it, which is really, really good. Overall, it's just such a good ultimate. Again, it has so much stuff going on, kind of like Lilith's ultimate, and it's really fun to use, but also super effective. Grok himself might not be the strongest character at times, but his ultimate is undeniably one of the strongest in the game, and it is so, so nice. And finally, at the very tip top of S tier, we have Furia's ultimate, which is arguably the best ultimate in the game because of how powerful of a buff it provides. So Furia's ultimate provides a massive 30% increased damage and movement speed amp to her entire team as long as they're within the general vicinity of her for 8 seconds. Oh my goodness gracious, why is this allowed? So she can just pop this at the very start of a team fight and power up her Cassie, power up her Bomb King, power up her Vatu and her Seven, and just have them charge down the enemy team and basically just win. Because the damage amp and the movement speed amp are just that powerful that, well, rushing down the enemies and winning duels against them is so easy. So it's basically just press E to win the team fight button, and on top of all that, during the initial casting animation, Furia herself can actually fly and get to some high grounds, and also is completely immune to damage. So it's a really, really good ultimate all around, one of the best, if not the best, in the game, and there's nothing really more to say about it. It's just that good, it kind of speaks for itself. So yeah, really, really good ultimate and is easily at the very top of my S tier. But yeah, that's just about going to wrap it up for my champion ultimates tier list. As always, this is an opinion piece, so if you disagree, that is absolutely fine. In fact, I'd love to hear who you think has the best ultimate in the comment section down below, so make sure you comment down below telling me exactly what you think. Also, of course, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more future content like this from me, and also check out the Twitch channel and the Discord server, both of which are linked in the description down below. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching, I will see you all next time, peace out.